purchasing your Powerlight preset or Origin series, powered by the PowerLight imaging technologies. Today, we'll be going over the operations of the Origin presetter. Cleanliness is key to ensure optimal accuracy and maximum longevity of your presetter. Always keep the spindle as clean as possible. We recommend the spindle mate, but a lint-free cloth works just as well. Before we get started today, let's go over some good measuring habits. Always get in the habit of cleaning the tool prior to putting it into the spindle. Another good measuring habit is always measuring with the inspection light off. And also, use the focus gauge to ensure that you're measuring the maximum diameter. Cleaning the edge with a piece of masking tape or putty will ensure that you're measuring the actual edge instead of any debris or dirt that's on the tool site. And now that we've gone over the good measuring habits, we're ready to get started. First, let's turn on the machine. The power button is located in the back side of the machine. The homing dialog is displayed every time the Origin presetter is turned on. Hold the red button down and move the X-axis until the control prompt registers that the X-axis is home. Then, move the Z-axis until the dialog box goes away. After the homing dialog box goes away, the digital readout displays the current measurement. You're now ready to begin measuring. Let's get started with some of the mechanical controls. The X-axis and Z-axis fine adjust. Move the axis in 1 micron increments. These will be mainly used for the fixed crosshair mode. The red button located on the camera arm releases the axis brake, allowing for full axis movement. Turning the spindle brake knob clockwise locks the spindle from turning. To unlock the spindle, turn the spindle brake knob counterclockwise. The spindle has a built-in torque control system so that the brake cannot be over-tightened. The following procedure will calibrate the presetter to establish 0 as the center line of the spindle for the X-axis and the gauge line for the Z-axis. Click the red corner to open up the gauge list. Ensure that the X and Z values, as seen on the spindle calibration sticker, match the master gauge fields. If they do not match, click on the X and Z values to edit using the on-screen keyboard. Position the presetter so that the gauge calibration sight is in line of the camera. The gauge calibration sight is located on the top edge of the spindle. Clean the gauge calibration sight of all dirt and debris using a piece of masking tape or putty. The focus gauge allows you to find the ideal measuring point as related to spindle rotation. The bars on the gauge will move closer together as the tool comes into focus. We know that the gauge sight is focused to the highest point when both bars are as close together as possible. Pushing the calibrate button will teach the system that these coordinates is this location. Select the green check mark to exit the gauge list. In this next section of the video, you will learn how to operate and use the gauge database. The gauge database is where the gauge data that controls the presetter coordinate system is managed. The gauge display shows the active gauge. By pressing the red arrow, you will open the gauge dialog box. This screen allows you to create, edit, delete, and load gauges to the measuring screen. Any of the values shown below can be edited by simply clicking on them. Once a gauge or adapter is selected, its name can be edited by clicking on the name again. The master reference point is where the calibration data for the spindle gauge sight is stored. All adapters without gauge sights are linked back to the master reference entry. Next, we'll be going over adding adapters without gauge sights. In order to measure tools other than that of the existing spindle, a tool adapter is required. Each adapter is associated back to the master gauge. The master gauge must be set up before proper measurements can be taken using the adapters. Using an adapter changes the height of the spindle's gauge line in relation to the Z measurement programmed in the spindle 0 settings. To add a new gauge, click on the Add Gauge icon. Next, click on the drop-down box and select the tooling type. After that, you will click on the Tool Type number box to enter the tool size using the number pad. Select the green checkmark icon to accept. Click on the Z box to edit the values. Enter the Z values as seen on the adapter. Make sure that there's a 0 in the X field because the adapter does not have an X offset from the spindle 0. Next, select the x-axis mode, either radius or diameter. For milling operations, press diameter. Click the adapter checkbox to associate the adapter back to the spindle. Once finished, click the green checkmark icon to accept and close the gauge window. If you're setting up a gauge that has a gauge sight, the only difference between creating a gauge with a sight and one without is that for a gauge with a sight, you will select the calibrate icon to enable independent calibration. Now we'll be going over how to delete a gauge. First, click the red button to access the gauge database. Note that the spindle 0 cannot be deleted. If the gauge that is being deleted is linked to a tool, the tool will revert back to using the spindle 0. Select the gauge that is being deleted by clicking on its name, then select the delete button. Press the green checkmark to confirm deleting the gauge. Once finished, click the green checkmark once more to go back to your measuring screen. Now we'll be going over how to choose an adapter. Pushing the reset button will bring up the adapter list. Clicking on its name will load the gauge to the measuring screen. Always ensure that the correct gauge entry is selected based on the current tool style. Next we'll be going over the measuring features. The first feature is the print label. The print label feature prints the current measurement on the optional label printer. Different label formats are available within the setup utility. Measuring geometry. The Measure Geometry feature places the system in real-time measuring mode. When Measure Geometry is active, the crosshair mode control icon becomes available to select either high point or edge tracking. High point mode is represented where the icon has a vertical and a horizontal line on the icons. High point mode forces the crosshairs to the highest feature on the screen. Edge alignment mode is represented when the icon line is at an angle. When edge alignment mode is selected, the crosshairs align to the surface of the tool. The X and Z readouts display the location where the two crosshairs intersect. In edge tracking mode, the angle display becomes active. Now we'll be going over the fixed crosshair mode. The fixed crosshair feature locates the crosshairs at the home position and engages 3 tracking gauges. The X-axis gauge tracks the distance from the edge of the tool to the vertical crosshair. The center point gauge tracks the distance from the closest point of the tool to the intersection point of the X and Z crosshairs. The Z-axis gauge tracks the distance from the edge of the tool to the horizontal crosshair. When you're done with the measuring process, press the reset button to bring up the gauge database selection list and return all axis readout settings to the default state. Next up is the inspection light. Selecting the inspection light will illuminate the tool for visual inspection. A slide bar to adjust light intensity will appear on the image window. As a general warning, the accuracy will decrease when measuring with the inspection light on. Let's take a look at merge mode. Clicking the merge mode icon puts the control into merge mode, which combines everything in the image viewer into one image as the spindle is rotated. Using merge is an easy way to find the largest length and diameter without having to analyze each cutting edge. When measuring a radius on a tool with a helix, first select merge mode, and then rotate the spindle 360 degrees before measuring the radius to show a representation of the tool's cutting geometry. To exit or reset the screen, select merge mode again or the reset button. The X-axis and Z-axis readouts have multiple features. The X-axis display shows the current diameter or radius measurement based on the vertical crosshair location. The Z-axis display shows the current length measurement based on the horizontal crosshair location. The hold measurement control can be initiated by clicking on either the X or Z-axis value. The value will freeze the display and hold the current measurement. Clicking again will unfreeze the axis measurement. This feature is used when the length and diameter measurement location cannot be seen by the camera at the same time. The numbers will have a red background when the display is in axis hold mode. To toggle between your units, clicking the inch-millimeter indicator will toggle the system between inch and millimeter mode. Clicking on the radius diameter indicator will toggle the system between radius and diameter mode for the x-axis. Absolute mode reflects the measurement from the current gauge loaded. When changed to incremental mode, the display zeroes out and the measurement begins at the current position of the crosshairs. Measuring the radius. Radius measurements are displayed in real time. Clicking on the number will freeze the value. The display background will turn red, indicating that hold mode is active. Clicking on the radius diameter icon will change the value to a diameter. To generate a graphical template, click the red arrow. This opens an input field that allows manual entry of a radius. Select the green check mark to draw the template. The radius is graphically drawn on the screen with a grip point at the center. By grabbing the grip point, this allows the user to drag the radius template around the screen. Measuring angles. Angle measurements are active when the crosshair control icon is in edge tracking mode. The angle display value represents the angle of the current crosshair. If both crosshairs are in edge tracking mode, the angle display value represents the included angle of the two features. Clicking on the icon will change the value from the horizontal axis to the vertical axis. Clicking on the number will hold the value. The number will have a red background when the display is in hold mode. Selecting the red corner of the angle display box opens an input field that allows manual entry of two angles by axis. Select the green check mark to draw the template. Clicking the horizontal vertical icon will change the axis in which the angles are drawn from. The angled lines are graphically drawn on the screen with a grip point at the center. Grabbing the grip point allows the user to drag the angled template around the screen. Let's go over Tool Runout. To activate Tool Runout, click on the Tool Runout icon or the red arrow. The Tool Runout dial indicator shows the location on the tool where the runout measurement will be taken. Let's rotate the spindle and find the low point using the live indicator. Once the low point is found, click on the unlock icon next to the low point line to freeze its location. Now let's find the high point using the dial indicator. Now that we've found the high point, we can click on the high point icon to lock this location. Once low point and high point lines are established, the runout display will be updated with the distance between the low and high point lines. The green line represents zero runout location. Clicking on the number will freeze the display. When in window box mode, the vision system will only analyze the part of the image that is inside the window box. This is very useful to zone in on individual features of a tool. To create a window, click and drag around the tool feature. Clicking anywhere on the screen will cancel the window and go back to full screen mode. This concludes the Origin training video. You can refer to the operation manual for more information on measuring and inspecting tools. And from all of us here at Parlec, we would like to thank you for purchasing your Origin presetter. And don't forget to keep us in mind for all of your high precision tool holding, boring, tapping, and presetting needs.